Hey, I'm Buck, I'm a science student at ANU, and I'm arguing that the current level of regulation with regards to nanoparticles is approximately, I think, where it should be, even though we don't have full information as to their toxicity just yet. So, nanoparticles are basically particles that are very small. Some standards have it as something like 100 to 300 nanometers in diameter, which seems like a vaguely sensible standard. And they're being put in all kinds of products. So for instance, sunscreen uses nanoparticle-sized zinc oxide, which means it can be transparent instead of being white, which some people view as an advantage. Colloidal silver, which is nanoparticle tinsy silver, is used as an antibacterial in bandages. And so these things all have quite useful properties, and people want to use them in products. However, there is some concern about the toxicity and the safety of these nanomaterials. Because the surface area of nanoparticles is far greater per unit mass than it would be for non-nanoparticles, that's obvious. So if I've got a block of rock, like a rock this big, it's only the outside of it is exposed to me if I eat it. But if it's in sand, all of the surface is exposed because of all the inside. So yeah, there's that concern. So anything that's toxic is going to be more toxic when it's ground up into smaller doses. So in that case, we probably shouldn't take materials that are known to be poisonous into nano size. We know that that's dangerous, but no one's really planning on doing that. The concern is that some particles which don't seem to be toxic in large amounts in nanoform may be really dangerous. And the precedent for this is mesothelioma. Mesothelioma is the disease you get from having asbestos in your lungs. So asbestos is a perfectly healthy chemical, perfectly fine. You could take pills of it and it'd probably be good for you. The problem is its crystals happen to be of a particular size and shape that mean you get a horrible disease, mesothelioma, in your lungs. So there's some concern that things like this could happen with nanoparticles. However, these concerns are mostly ill-founded. There's been a lot of research done into a lot of the nanoparticles which we use in things and whether they've got any toxicity. Most of the time it's been found to have very little negative health impact. That's just assessing the toxicity, so that wouldn't notice something like mesothelioma. But the thing is, most nanoparticles also decay fairly quickly in the body, so there's no worry about things building up over time like they do with asbestos. The only reason I feel qualified to talk about this is I went to the Australian Nanotechnology Conference, an Australian Nanotechnology Conference called ICON back at the beginning of this year, and I spent 3 or 4 days hanging out with some of Australia's leading experts on nanosafety. So just from their research, I know that the smartest people in this field don't really worry too much about nanoparticles which are actually being introduced to things. So for instance, I've already talked about how the durability carbon nanotubes aren't particularly durable, which indicates that they're not dangerous in something like an asbestos way, and we also know they're non-toxic. I asked one of someone who worked at CSIRO, and her job was actually assessing the safety of nanotechnology, and she reckoned that, in her knowledge, maybe 2 people have died as a result of nanotechnology exposure. But that was in China, where they were working on machinery in a closed room because they didn't have any heating and there was no insulation or anything else, and they were using all kinds of other god-awful chemicals. So that's probably to blame for that. There was a study on Buckminster fullerene a couple years back which indicated that might be toxic, but it was later found that the toxic bit was probably just another chemical which was used in the preparation of the Buckminster fullerene. So yeah, this stuff probably isn't very dangerous, even though there is, of course, a non-zero chance that something like asbestos will come out. So we have to make a cost-benefit analysis. So the benefits of nanotechnology are pretty huge. We've got all kinds of positive effects from it. We can do all kinds of cool stuff with it. What's the probability of something bad happening? How bad is that something? Multiply those two together, compare if it's better or worse than the benefits being avoided because we don't utilize the technology. In my opinion, the chance of something bad happening is quite low, say 20%, and how bad it would be in most of those cases isn't all that bad. Yeah. Therefore, I think that the current level of regulation of nanotechnology is probably about right. There are occasional flaws, like the system isn't really designed to deal with chemicals which are the same chemically but different sizes, so that should be altered, but pretty much I agree with the level of regulation in the nanotechnology. Thank you very much. I hope you agree with me.